Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and this episode is very important in COVID-19 situation because country like Malaysia, Singapore, they are now heavily involved with e-commerce. And most important thing is that government also giving a lot of incentives to the small medium enterprise, how they can utilize e-commerce, and there are many advantage and disadvantage and many interesting things. I think our panelist will discuss on that. So I want to start from Professor David. How do you want to analyze today's topic, internet commerce?
Yeah, good morning, Sharif. Well, good morning here, of course, and good evening there, and good day wherever you are in the world. How's that? That's a good way to get started. I'm having my morning coffee, so I have to start with good morning. Anyway, yes, this is a very interesting subject, and the fact that you talked about COVID has changed the landscape drastically in the last 14, 16 months or so. Um, so how I want to introduce this is talking a little bit about where we're at today and where we may be going tomorrow. That's what my futurist hat on just a little bit. We've known that COVID's had a great impact on commerce because people didn't want to go out and people were willing to try something new. So those that had not been buying online had gone to buying online everything from groceries to clothes to household appliances, whatever it is that they needed. And that is with the existing internet as we find wherever we happen to be in the world. So the present state of internet commerce is centered around websites, for example, or platforms that are dedicated to that. Now, people have also found that because of COVID that maybe they couldn't get to work, maybe they couldn't do other things, so maybe they wanted to sell some things that they had around the house online, or maybe they even wanted to try opening a store. There's software out there to be able to do that. There's software like Wix or through concerns like GoDaddy that will help you get set up and create your own web presence on your own web page. But also, perhaps an easier way to go, and one that has greater exposure, would be going out and using some of the platforms out there. eBay is a platform that's not new. I used eBay back in the 90s, and at that time it was pretty much for trading used products that you might have. And since then, it's evolved into a full platform for not only new products sold by individuals, but also major corporations are setting up stores on eBay because of their structure. One of the advantages that eBay has in this is, much like using your own website to sell online, is you are not competing with the platform itself. You create your own website, you sell only your own products on it. On eBay does not sell any products at all. They are strictly a platform for plugging people who want to sell something together with people who want to buy something. Of course, the one that people talk about in great abundance these days is Amazon, which does sell its own products. Matter of fact, it's not new either, even though it's big in the headlines. It's been around since the 90s and so as well, but it started out as a bookseller and then gradually moved forward and started opening itself up, and now it's moving in all kinds of directions. But it first and foremost sells its own products and then allows other people to fill in products that it does not directly sell, or in some cases, people, third parties, and Amazon compete in selling to the consumer. And that has advantages and disadvantages, but it's a different type of platform than, say, eBay might be. And now you have the brick and mortar stores, which some have gone by the wayside. I've talked about the demise of Sears in the United States and how they could not make a change. And I still find that amazing because they were a catalog company back from the very early days of America and couldn't make the transition into the digital world. And they got stuck in their ways. But other stores are seeing that and they're not getting stuck. So a big retailer in the United States is Walmart. Walmart has stores all throughout the country, and they're leveraging website. They're leveraging the hybrid of allowing on their website platform individual retailers, third parties, to be able to sell and fill in gaps that Walmart can't do. And they're allowing the opportunity to have in-store pickup, in-store returns for things that you buy online. So they're trying to take their own special take on internet commerce. And then you have specialty platforms that are set up. One of them that I like is called Etsy, ETSY, and they're really great for handmade products, products that are dedicated. So you have platforms that have a particular flavor, and people have found these during COVID. One of them that I found was grocery delivery. I shopped 3 or 4 grocery stores. One of those grocery stores had elected to decide to not allow people to book grocery sales online, and that hurt them drastically during COVID. A couple of major grocery chains did exactly the opposite and partnered with companies that would do in-store shopping for you and either deliver it or make it available for pickup. That was great as far as COVID was concerned. One of these large companies liked the idea so much that they bought the company that was doing the in-store shopping and set up their own front. And I just saw a news report yesterday on national TV here in the United States that said that with vaccinations improving and people being able to return to life, that there's no sign of grocery delivery going away. People have fell in love with this during the last 12 to 14 months. I prefer to put my order in online and then drive by and just have them put it in the trunk of my car and drive away. But the point is that COVID moved quickly where we were in shopping of all different types. Now, another thing that COVID indirectly helped, because this was around before too, all of this was around before, COVID just accelerated some of these things, is subscription shopping. There are certain things that I need on a regular basis. In the past, I would keep a list on the refrigerator door and I would write down when I needed things and I'd take that list and I'd go physically into a store to buy this. But today, those things that I need on a regular basis just show up at my door without me even needing to think about it. And I can adjust the frequency and I can periodically check and make sure that I'm getting the best price. And the company wants to keep me on the subscription because that's a very good business model for them. So they continue to show me what my price is in comparison, and any sales that they have, they automatically give me the sale price. All of this is changing. So subscription is a really good way to do that. Now, if you're selling, if you decide to sell on one of these platforms, say Amazon, because that's the one that people probably know the best, there's a couple of different ways you can go about doing that too. You can have a casual account where you don't pay any monthly fee. You pay a little higher transaction fee, and when you sell something, they get the transaction fee. They can give you discounted shipping. You can have a professional seller's account if you decide that you really want to go into this. And with a professional seller's account, you do pay a monthly fee, but you create for yourself a whole bunch of new opportunity by the tools that they give you to do this. And one of the biggest tools is something called FBA, Fulfillment by Amazon. So you decide that you want to sell, pick a product, toothpaste, and you have cartons and cartons and cartons of toothpaste. You don't have to have them sent to your house and then you run down to the post office or some other distribution channel to send them. You can buy from the toothpaste manufacturer and have it shipped directly to Amazon and have it stored in one of their warehouses. And when an order comes in, Amazon processes the order, ships it for you, makes the appropriate charges, and you didn't have to handle anything other than you need to keep your advertising and you need to keep You're buying, your wholesale buying for quantities intact. That's why I've got a warehouse behind me, because warehousing is very important when you're doing any type of commerce. Okay, but that's a good example. Now, there are competitors to that. Let's say that you set up a website, and the website that you set up, you don't want to keep all that toothpaste at home if you're going to be a toothpaste king, and that's what you're selling in my example. There are companies out there like ShipBob, for example, which takes the FBA part of the Amazon model and says, look, we've got warehouses too. You ship your products to us, tie your software, whatever it might be from your website, whether it might be from Amazon or eBay or SD or some other platform, into our distribution website, and we'll do the fulfillment for you. And both FBA and ShipBob have websites all across the country, and as a matter of fact, all across the world. So if I really turn into a toothpaste giant, I can have some of my toothpaste sitting in New York, and some of it sitting in Texas, and some of it sitting in California. And why is that important? Because quick delivery is really, really important. And if I have that located closer to you, I can get that to you in a much shorter period of time. Not only that, they'll handle software upgrades as time goes on, and they'll handle returns. So there's a lot of opportunity and so forth that's here. So real quickly, and then I'll let somebody else talk. What else is going to happen? This is the state of how things are today, and we've done a fast forward in the last 14 to 16 months, but it's not going to stop there. I see an acceleration in this like I do in most technologies. So things like FBA and ShipBob are great, and I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen into the future, but I look at things like 3D printing, and I say 3D printing centers. Perhaps instead of having warehouses across the country, what we have are 3D printing centers. So when somebody orders something that can be 3D printed, it gets 3D printed at that location, whether it's New York or Texas or California, and then shows up. And maybe even further down the road, we'll have something in our homes. But first, it will be some kind of distribution hub similar to like the way that we currently store products. And how we order things is going to change. It won't necessarily be sitting down in front of a computer and filling out my order for groceries. It might be tapping my smartwatch and saying, yeah, I want to increase the quantity on something, or increase how soon it's going to come to me. 5G is an enabler for all of this, and we've talked about 5G and other platforms, because this will be able to make the real-time exchange, especially on the go, so much more available. Other things for the future to consider that are really nice. One of the things I hate is making that list and putting it on the refrigerator. So I'm looking forward to buying myself a smart refrigerator that knows when the milk is about to run out, and it puts it on the list for me, and then tells me, hey, you know, you've got enough items on your list. Do you want to go ahead and create an order now? And I look forward to smart pantries that do that with dry goods. So that's going to be a really interesting thing. And then one other thing that's coming for the future that we're starting to see now is, call it virtual reality fitting rooms. Okay, I was out at a website because I wanted to try different eyeglasses. So instead of going into an eyeglass store, I could sit here at home and try on and see what different glasses looked like on me. And it's very easy to imagine that I can do that with a new sport coat or other things, and perhaps new equipment that will help measure so that I can get the exact right fittings and so forth. These are things that are not here yet or are just starting to be here. You may start to see some of that online. Now, keep in mind, a lot of what I've talked about is retail, because that's probably what we're most familiar with. But this is going to have an impact on wholesale and business-to-business sales as well. Imagine a business supplier that sells to other businesses, that has subscription services and automatic update for ordering. Look at the speed of those transactions, and there may be a whole bunch of small transactions, instead of just large orders between business to business. So some of these kind of things are going to be better. Now, since I'm active with the Transhumanist Party in my state and country and around the world, I've got to tie transhumanism in on this. So what has this all got to do with transhumanism? As far as I'm concerned, it has a lot to do, because this is a way that we can live better and facilitate us living longer. And it's good, rational thinking to solve the problems that we have and be able to take advantage of the opportunities that are coming. So those are my brief opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Aaron, you are from industry, so how do you want to share your experience with our audience? Unmute, please.
Right. Well, I'm actually glad that Mr. Schumacher there gave such a broad overview of it. That saves me a lot of explaining to do. You know, e-commerce is basically just the buying and selling of goods and services online. It's just a business model. There's a lot of very powerful tools for setting up your own e-commerce platform. But what nobody really gets into, and this is again for the young entrepreneurs out there, is how much planning is truly involved. Because again, e-commerce is just a business model. Drop shipping is just a fulfillment method. You're still in charge of constructing the business yourself. You have to know how to make a business plan. You have to know how to cover the legal ends of it. You have to check your local legal restrictions and all of the laws that pertain to what you're trying to do, for several reasons. Several reasons, but that's a step that a lot of e-commerce people actually just completely skip. A lot of e-commerce stores and things that I've seen aren't even legitimate businesses. You know, they're just a page that some guy made to sell stuff. So I urge you to not be that guy. Check into your local regulations, make sure you're legal. And secondly, this is the most important part. Being an entrepreneur is about providing something of value. If you're saturating the market, flooding it with basically just regurgitated garbage, you're not producing anything of value, and you cease to be an entrepreneur. The reason why I caution you in that is because e-commerce is probably one of the biggest revolutions to commerce to ever happen. And whatever you do is going to take off as long as you keep at it. And the implications of that means you have to have your assets covered. You have to cross your T's and dot your I's, and you have to make sure that you're doing it in a right way that actually provides value and doesn't saturate the market, because then you're ruining a good thing, not only for yourself, but for other people. And by taking these more ethical approaches to operating an e-commerce store, you will be contributing and preventing negative regulations that will occur when people abuse systems like this. For instance, I know that eBay will no longer do business with people drop shipping through AliExpress, I believe is what it was. Don't quote me on that. But you already start to see some of these giants already not wanting to work with certain types of business models because of people abusing it. So e-commerce is a very powerful tool. There's a positive to it, and there's also a negative to it. As the positives have already been broadly discussed, I guess I just in my opening comments just wanted to caution against the negatives, so that you can be a successful entrepreneur in the e-commerce industry, provide something of value, and not have to worry about legal ramifications. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Edward.
Mm-hmm. Well, David has done an excellent job of outlining the issues and the future, I think, of e-commerce. I'll just add a few things. First of all, you can think of e-commerce both in terms of the of e-commerce between businesses, e-commerce facilitating businesses, because that is part of commerce, is businesses dealing with each other, businesses, for example, that need to get their supplies at the right time, all of these sorts of things. In the United States, of course, we tend to think of e-commerce mainly in terms of delivery, in terms of retail business. And that's, of course, where it's really taken off. Since the year 2007, what we've seen, for example, is that e-commerce delivery of packages to your door has become, I think it's like 16 or 17% now of all retail sales in the United States is through e-commerce. And Amazon, of course, is the big one in the United States. And of course, it's a global company as well. And that's going to only continue. We've seen that it's not just a matter of packages to your door. Even before the pandemic, as David has indicated, we had companies like Grubhub where you could get food, a food delivered to your door. And then, of course, during the pandemic here in the United States, instead of going to a restaurant, a lot of restaurants who were forced to close down, they couldn't bring customers in, survived because they were allowed to produce food in their own kitchens, if their employees were masked and so on. And then you could order and it would be picked up by, one company or another and brought to your door. So if I go in my city here of Rockville, I can see the businesses that survived because they had some kind of e-commerce, delivering groceries, for example. A couple of our grocery stores specialized in doing that, as David has suggested. What's interesting in the United States also is one of the largest companies in the past has been the U.S. Postal Service, which of course is a government monopoly. It's a business, but it's a monopoly in this country. And what's happened over the last, since say 2007, the U.S. Postal Service has lost something like $87 billion in losses because fewer people use the mail to deliver information. They don't put letters in the mail. They simply email or they do it that way. But the one area that we've seen growth is package delivery because the U.S. Postal Service has agreements with Amazon, with Federal Express, for example, Federal Express, basically sharing responsibilities. And so that's one area of the U.S. Postal Service where you actually see growth. And for the first time last year, revenue from package delivery in the U.S. for the U.S. Postal Service exceeded revenue from first class mail. By the way, just to give you a contrast, Amazon started about 20 years ago with nothing. Basically, it was Jeff Bezos with a little metal desk. I even talked to him about it. He told me how, they'd load up the station wagon and bring packages to the post office themselves. And now, of course, his company has something like $400 billion in revenue a year, 1.3 million employees, compared to the U.S. Postal Service, which had 700,000 employees in 2000. It now only has 500,000 employees. It probably should have a lot less. Its revenues last year were only about 73 billion compared to 400 billion for Amazon. So that shows what these entrepreneurs can do. E-commerce is especially important for small businesses. One of the things that again was good even before the pandemic was that a business, for example, in some less populated part of the United States, and this lesson probably is good for a lot of Asian countries, might not have a local population they can sell to, say a boutique that sells certain kinds of clothing or whatever it happens to be, but they could sell and advertise nationally because of the e-commerce setup. So the fact that they're in Iowa and there's not a lot of population in Iowa still means that I could buy. David, you mentioned Itsy. I bought this shirt that I'm wearing right now. That I bought this from a boutique in Lithuania, and I have 3 shirts that I bought from them in Lithuania because they did these little boutique things. And I said, "Wow, that really looks cool. I want to buy that." This is before the pandemic, so I'm a representation of e-commerce right here on the show. One of the things that my wife and I have started to do is we want to try to get better food into our children's diets. They like pizza and they like mac and cheese. We want to do more than that. And so there's a couple of local businesses. One's called HelloFresh. And what happens is every week we pick out 3 basically meals, and they send us right to our door every Saturday morning a box that includes all the ingredients and instructions on how to make the meals. And they're basically from local distributors, local farmers, and so forth. And it just comes automatically. So rather than going to a restaurant, well, there it is at our door. And my wife, gets to cook these very, very good meals. So again, the possibilities are endless. David mentioned clothing and eyeglasses. This is something that I'm very keen about because I can see a day, and it's coming, where instead of having to go into a clothing store, I basically have my measurements are measured with a lighter laser or something like that. I design exactly what I want the shirt to be. Maybe I want this shirt to be white, and I want the stripe here to be black, and this size and all. And I simply push a button. It goes to maybe a local 3D printer. Maybe it's at my laundry, and then it appears at my door. Exactly the right fit. One of the things in the United States, and here's something where some entrepreneurs in Asia can really get into the market. Most states, to get eyeglasses, prescription eyeglasses, every year or every 2 years, they require you to go to a doctor, and they charge you a whole lot of money to check your eyes. And then, of course, you purchase glasses, and it takes a week or two for them to actually make it, unless you pay a lot of money. There's no reason we have to do it that way. There's no reason why I can't test my eyes looking at this screen, get exactly what I need, push a button, send it to some company that will print out exactly the glasses that I need for a fraction of the cost. It'll put a lot of people, a lot of businesses out of business here, but I don't care because I'm going to get cheap glasses that fit me exactly. So there's so many opportunities here, and it's very exciting for e-commerce. And again, this is the wave of the future, as David has indicated, and I'm very excited about it. And I hope entrepreneurs in Asia are very excited about it. And I will yield the floor to fellow employees. By the way, I see there's something. I want to just make one thing, because I've written 2 books on the U.S. Postal Service and have been very involved lately. Postal Service in this country has been losing money for almost a decade or two. And most of it is because first of all, they simply can't keep up and modernize because of a number of reasons. They put a lot more machines in, but their labor costs are still extremely high as opposed to what Amazon is doing. The second thing is, and this is why business planning is important, as we heard earlier, is that the Postal Service is required to put aside money for retirees. What happens in the United States, and this is a business issue that's very important. What happens in the United States is that some government agencies basically will promise their workers huge retirement benefits without any thought of how you're going to pay for them. And the U.S. Postal Service is required to at least put up some money or some indication of how they're going to pay for it, which is different from a lot of other government agencies. And so because they're actually forced not to lie to their people and say, well, we'll pay for you somehow, they've been forced to put up money for retirement, and that's one of the reasons why they've been losing a lot of money, is because they don't have a very good business plan. And again, the U.S. Postal Service is not going to be, in the future what it is today, and has nothing to do with Republicans or Democrats. It has something to do in this country with how the thing is run, and that's why Amazon is running rings around them, and Federal Express is as well. So anyway,
Thank you, Mr. Manuel.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for the invitation. So yeah, I would say e-commerce is actually about buying or selling products or services online using different internet or online platforms. And e-commerce has helped a lot into empowering digital economy and digital transformation, especially in developing countries in support to UN Sustainable Development Goals. And especially during COVID, we saw a lot of companies, universities, and financial institutions uh, who decided to go for that digital transformation to bring their activities and their services online. So one important point also is the steadiness of the internet. For example, in developing countries, there are some um, areas, some regions that are not covered by the internet. So sometimes it becomes difficult for the e-commerces to reach those different regions. So okay, just a moment. So, from my background in satellite telecommunication, I would say that uh, satellite-based technologies are also a good option to bring internet access and steadiness or more stable internet access that can help those different e-commerce businesses to reach out to more people and more customers. Yeah, and also um, we recently we launched one project. It was called l'Econofric Global, where we are trying to bring different experts to study to make some research on the different economic aspects of digitalization, like digital transformation, including e-commerce. So we actually focuses on 12 different sectors that are directly affected by e-commerce. So one of uh, those sectors is the finance sector with mobile banking and the different online payments. The second sector is the retail sector. I think most of the guest speakers they discussed already about Amazon and the different retail services that we have online. The third sector is the construction sector with with satellite-based technologies. We have more geospatial application these days, and um, most of the companies they are using satellite-based data for 3D mapping and also virtual reality and augmented reality, and for their construction. In that way, they can 3D model the whole building before even starting the building. So the fourth sector is the transportation sector. So one example is Uber. Like people can book their trip being in their room or being at home, and then it makes it very easier, especially during the COVID time. And the fifth sector is the energy sector. So um, businesses can also help into energy management, uh, and also people can pay for their subscription for their energy online, and sometimes they can get some reduction on their subscriptions as well. The sixth sector is the media sector. So I think that one is the most popular one in e-commerce, like the digital marketing on using different social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, yeah, or using their own websites. So the seventh sector is the manufacturing sector. I think one of the guest speaker also mentioned that, like 3D printing and which is the additive manufacturing that helps a lot of manufacturing companies to save a lot of money because using 3D printing and by optimizing the manufacturing process using different softwares, they save a lot of money and they avoid some confusion, they avoid some loss during the manufacturing process. The eighth sector is the health sector. So during the COVID situation, it's important uh, the health industry or the medical sector is becoming more and more important. And we saw some businesses who are proposing some apps where you can get some appointments with your with your doctor before even leaving home, so that you know exactly what time you can reach there, and you don't have to wait a lot, because waiting in the same room as people for a long time can make you get the COVID. So yeah, it helps also in that sector. And the ninth one is the education sector. Like most of the universities now, yeah, they have to come up with using Zoom and the different platforms. And I think one of the guests mentioned, I think it was Mr. Aaron, the saturation of the market. So I will give one example on this sector, especially the education and research sector. So with the COVID situation, there are like most of webinars, most of workshops going on online, and yeah. So how can research institutions and institutions propose something more innovative in that sector? So we have one organization, and instead of doing the same thing that people are already doing, like doing workshop, we actually propose a platform where people can conduct a research for on a period of 3 to 6 months, and then after that they can publish their results. So instead of conducting webinars where we can give them a little knowledge, we can actually run a whole research online where they can actually learn more and then get it published. So that's one of the example of diversity that the e-commerce businesses can bring into their different sector. So the 10th sector is the mining sector. So using the different uh, maybe satellite-based technologies, or also the different digital technologies, yeah, it can help to for supply chain, and also for monitoring the different resources. The 11th one is the food and beverage. So we can order food online. It's really important during the COVID pandemic. We can use online platforms to order food and get them delivered. The last one, the 12th one, is the agriculture sector, uh, with the supply chain as well, and also with smart farming. We can use different satellite-based technologies, and we can monitor. We can be A farmer can be at home, but he can uh, guide the different drones to supply a water into his farm at a specific place where he wants to the water to be supplied. So yeah, that's also one way.
Thank you.
So thank you
Thank
so
you. Thank you.
much.
This is very good explanations from different sectors. Professor Donalds, thank you. Thank you for joining today. What's your explanations on internet commerce? Unmute.
There. Now I'm unmuted. Um, I want to kind of leverage off of some things that other people have said. I think it's interesting that at one point, Walmart was the king of distribution. In fact, the US military studied what Walmart did so that they could start doing distribution, but they got basically in the race, Amazon passed them. When you can consider the distribution, I get things from Amazon basically in one day for a lot of circumstances. Sometimes I get it through the mail, but I disagree with Edward on this. I know Daryl Issa hated the mail system, and he spent a lot of his career in Congress trying to handicap it and cause problems for it. Most businesses do not put aside the money for their pensions in advance. A good business model would allow you to be able to figure out, just like you borrow money and you figure out from your revenues how much of the money that you're going to be able to make from your revenues to pay the debts. Most businesses look at their pensions and they figure out how much their ongoing cost for paying their pensions is going to be and figure that into their business model. It's very unusual to put aside all the money for all the pensions you're going to pay ever in the future. And that's what Congress required the post office to do. And that put a huge burden on the post office. Their actual cash flow is stable. They actually do make a profit if you take that factor out. They do change. And I want to just mention that because I think that different people have different agendas. But regardless, I think that people don't realize the human cost of the distribution. The distribution doesn't just magically happen. What winds up happening is that the companies like Amazon create systems of warehouses, and they put the warehouses, if possible, into places where the property is the least expensive. So some of their major warehouses that distribute to the West Coast are in Nevada, where in rural parts of Nevada, where the property values are very, very low. I mean, in Silicon Valley, one square yard where you're putting your boxes to store them before you distribute them costs so much money. It's staggering. And so it's just not financially viable for them to do that. So they put their warehouses way out on the periphery of town. Walmart has always done that. The Walmart big box stores have always been outside of the town where the property values are lower. The consequence of that is they've destroyed towns all over the world because people go and drive outside of town to the big box stores, and they stop buying stuff from the retailers in the town. And I'm of mixed views on that because, why not? Why shouldn't people get things for less expense? But when COVID happened, Amazon, where I buy a lot of stuff, they went from 2 days. I'm an Amazon Prime member, and one of the benefits of Amazon Prime is that everything is delivered to me with no extra cost. So I pay an annual fee of about $150, and because of that annual fee, I don't have to pay shipping for things that I buy. And it's been traditionally 2-day shipping. When COVID happened, it expanded to 1 week. And after 6 months or some period of time, Amazon managed to hire enough people to be able to get it to me in 2 days again. And now it's often 1 day. I needed a cable, and I ordered it yesterday, and I'll get it today for my modem. And but Amazon does not pay very well, and their working conditions are draconian. They're the worst, I think, that have ever existed in history. They actually have cameras and lasers to make sure that people don't slack off during the day. They do not take breaks more than very, very short breaks. They're required to work very long hours, and if they slow down under a certain rate that they determined 3 times, even if they've worked there for 10 years, they fire them. There's people with injuries from repetitive stress, from all of the where you do the same motion over and over and over, and that basically ruins your arms or your legs and things like that. So it's not it's worth realizing that these things provide benefits, but they also could be somehow made more useful, more acceptable for human beings, so that human beings aren't, considered to be robots inside of these places. Most of the things that people mentioned here about the future, I've been doing for many years. I got, like for a while, I was getting subscription stuff. But what would happen is if I took a vitamin or something like that on a subscription service, if I missed a couple of days, and I did this cumulatively for a little while, all of a sudden I'd wind up with 3 bottles of the same thing. And I stopped using the subscription services. They just really didn't work for me. But my medical facility where I go to medicine has had online appointments for 5 years or more. And oftentimes I have my medical appointments online. And the medical place that I go, I can go and check the results of any tests that I've ever had, the history of any vaccinations that I've taken. In fact, I use that to prove I have a COVID vaccination now. I just log into that and I show them, I have to use my fingerprints, so it's me for sure. And I just show them on my phone. And so a lot of these things have been around for years. One of the things I want to mention that people haven't mentioned is when I was working for NetApp, when I first started working there, and I think 2013, which is now 8 years ago or almost, and actually more than that, almost, about that. Anyway, at that time, one of their biggest partners, and still is, I think, is Cisco. And when they bought a lot of equipment from Cisco because they bundle it and sell it with their equipment as a data center solution. And Cisco required everyone that worked for it, even contractors, to completely pay by electronic fund transfers. And so EFT, they had already automated the thing. Nobody wrote checks to Cisco, or nobody, all of the transactions were done electronically. So that was 8 years ago. And when I lived in Finland, the first thing, I was working there, and the first thing that I had to do was get a bank account and register, because they didn't pay you by checks. They were already requiring you to, all payments were done electronically. And by then, their vending machines took credit cards or debit cards, just everything was already automated. And this was 2008. So all this stuff we're talking about in the future has been around for a long time. So the 2 points I'm trying to make is that on the one hand, doing these things electronically kind of disguises the human cost of it. There's a huge human cost to these things, and it also disguises the environmental cost for it too. They're kind of hidden for you. You don't see the big buildings. You don't see the labor, the bad working conditions that the people are in, or things like that. I mean, if these warehouses are located out in the middle of nowhere, somebody's either got to commute or move to the middle of nowhere, and living in the middle of nowhere is no fun, and at least for a lot of people. One other thing, going back to the consumer thing that people talked about, I just want to mention is that I know when I was young, there was these things called flea markets. And what they were big markets that in our town, they were done in a drive-in movie theater lot. And during the day, you couldn't watch drive-in movies, so they turned it into this. And I knew lots of entrepreneurial people who made their living scouring everywhere, even other flea markets, looking for stuff that people were selling for a lot less than it was worth. And they would, whether it's antiques were a common thing, but anything that they could find, that if somebody was selling a refrigerator for a fraction of the cost because they were moving or something like that, they'd grab it at the low cost and then sell it at a cost that was closer to what they should have paid for it. They should have sold it for. Now all of those people have moved online, and they go through eBay and other kinds of sources, and basically online has become a great big flea market. So just about anyone can get into that. You have to kind of have the right personality for it. That's not something that I find interesting, but some people absolutely love it, and they do really quite well. So from the consumer point of view, there's a lot of opportunities as well.
Thank you. We have our honorable guest, Mr. Paul. So how are you today? We are discussing on internet commerce. So how do you want to analyze these points? And we want to know more about your televisions and your peace-related activities.
And I grew up in the shoe business. My dad had a little shoe store up in Tarrytown, New York. So I'm sort of like a guy who still wants a little shoe store on the corner here on the Upper West Side. And we have them. And we also even have flea markets on the 78th Street on Sundays. But, you know, when I talk to somebody working for a big company in Asia, you know, the answering phone banks, you know, I like to talk to people, because similarly, Donald, I think what I just heard, I just got on, sorry, I'm late here, but, you know, similarly, I like human contact. You know, I'm sort of under that belief of, you know, what are we doing here? Let's have some fun together, and let's speak to each other and give each other a hug. And I'm concerned, you know, there's a book, John Nesbitt wrote a book, Megatrends. And it talked about the different trends of our industrial age, or, you know, the computer age, technology age, you know. So I'm always wondering, you know, so who's going to be the only one left is going to be somebody working on a computer, a maintenance man, a maintenance girl, a woman. And, you know, we won't need, it's just a robot world. It can potentially, you know, we can potentially create a robot world. For everything, drones, robots delivering your FedEx packages. But where are all those employees going to go? It's a confusing issue for me, but maybe it does go into, people do find other areas. Maybe they'll all go back to agriculture. Oh, wait, we can use robots for agriculture. So it's a concern. E-commerce is, look, the buy and sell, eBay, Alibaba, that's all they are, is a store to sell stuff, and they got enough people to come and buy them there. Because they get enough people to buy them there, they'll be able to sell you something for, instead of $1, for 50 cents, because they're going to sell 5 million of them as opposed to 5 of them. It's just, you know, I don't think we can stop it, because it is the way it is. And if somebody says they want to direct deposit your check into the bank and forget about the wonderful woman and man who was working at the bank at the front desk, who is our friend and you feel will help you or tell you your scenario, I don't know what's going to happen to them. You know, they'll close the banks, and that's what they're doing. They'll close this, and it'll just be back-end businesses in many respects. New York is good. New York, the people are pulling it together. New York will, in this whole area, people want to be here. It's busy bee. People going back to work and still being safe, and you know, they'll figure out what to do with any corporate big building that might not be occupied as much as it was. They're industrious here, so I think actually New York will grow. I mean, we spent enough money here in America to help small businesses, to help theaters, to help individuals. We spent trillions of dollars. I don't even know where it's going. It's written paper, you know. We spent a lot. Let's write another trillion. I mean, it is what it is. So we are, but who cares? That like right another trillion, and a lot more people benefit from it. So it is what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul, for joining today's session. Uh, Before I go to Professor David, I just want to add, after 12 hours of time, we have our another show on life extensions, because of many important organizations from Asia Pacific. We organize this session, life extensions and these things, because they want to learn more. So I request today's speakers, if you wish, you can join after 12 hours of our session. It will be very important, and I'm sure many important organizations will observe our show, and few of them also join in our show. So Professor David, we do discuss on e-commerce and other things. COVID-19 actually helped to understand that how e-commerce is important for us. So what next? What is the futuristic thought on e-commerce? All of our speakers want to share. Like you, then Mr. Manuel, then Professor David, and Mr. Paul as well.
Yes, you're right. COVID really was an accelerator as far as bringing us into this. As Donald pointed out, much of this is not new, but much of it became accepted in the last 14, 16 months or so. As I talked about in my opening remarks, going through all the different things that had been accepted, Edward added to that. And Manuel, thank you very much for going through and talking about all the different sectors, because it's really important to realize that going into the future, what we think of, we're talking about e-commerce today, but we're talking about money moving on the internet. And the internet will change. We talked about technology that will allow it to change to make it more immediate. And this will all be tied into commerce, because commerce is what we as humans have always done, going as far back into history as we can. But it's going to change as it moves forward. So that's kind of the nature of your question. I think it needs, in response to Donald and Paul, that it needs to do this in a humane fashion. Now, the definition of that may be a little bit elusive. I think we all have an idea what we think of as humane, or the human way of doing something. But as we look back over thousands of years, we can see how this has changed over time as we have adapted in ourselves and in our systems to perform commerce. We've had talks on money and so forth on this show before, and how that's transformed over time. So things like blockchain will have a lot to do with what goes on in the future, I believe, irrespective of whether it's tied into cryptocurrencies or not. But blockchain as a distributed ledger may take some of the centralization out of things, may change the face of things like the big businesses like Amazon and Walmart, making things move in a more peer-to-peer, business-to-business, person-to-person type of activity. Robots, Donald made a comment about that as far as repetitive stress in factories and in distribution centers and so forth, and robots could help eliminate that. But I think one of the biggest changes we as people will face is how we look, interact, and assess our own value in all of this. For years, when somebody would say, "Hi, David, tell me about yourself," I would start to tell them about being an engineer, working in data centers, creating data centers. That's the work that I did. But really, what I was a father, and I was a husband, and believe it or not, a bit of an artist. I didn't talk about those things. I think that perhaps may be where identity will shift into the future and will have a big impact because of the way that we may earn money, which is another discussion that we probably should have in one of these shows, is how people will earn money in the future and how people will spend their time in the future. It won't be the way we've done it in the past. And I think that's going to really make the difference. We do need the human contact. That's built into us, always has been. That will find a way to go forward, but it will probably not do it based on what do you do for a living. Where do you spend your 8, 10, 12 hours a day to earn your money? That will change, and commerce will continue. I do believe it'll be more decentralized, and I actually do believe it will be more human.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Manuel. Yes.
Okay,
What,
thank
what
you.
the futuristic idea you want to share with this session?
Sure. So I would say that, yeah, like one guest speaker mentioned it before, most of the developed countries, they've been implementing this digital transformation and e-commerce plan over a decade ago, but for developing countries, it's still at a developing stage, I would say, or at some earlier stage. So yeah, I would say that it will be important if the government institutions or the different institutions, the different in the developing countries can make a plan for digital transformation, and especially for internet services, because without internet services, the startups that are bringing new ideas in e-commerce, they cannot reach out to most customers. So it's important that they bring a stable internet services to they should also support the different small businesses and startups that are coming into the e-commerce, um, because yeah, it's in the future, um, those e-commerce businesses can bring a lot of return on investment that can help to grow their economy as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Donald.
There we go. Yeah, well, right now e-commerce is creating a lot of jobs, but sadly the jobs that it's creating are they're very bad. They're not very good jobs. There is, of course, the software engineers, people at the top level that can make quite a bit of money. Before Amazon, Walmart had the town of Bentonville, Arkansas. And Arkansas is one of the most backward states in the United States. It's got one of the highest poverty rates. It's got, all kinds of health problems and a lot of stuff like that. I lived there for a while, and I know I have a good sense of what it's like. But but they're right in the middle of Arkansas. Bentonville was one of the most sophisticated towns in the United States because of the software engineers that they pulled in to create the distribution system for Walmart. And what Walmart did that was novel was that they knew exactly what was in every warehouse. So if every store, and they used the store as warehouses. So at any particular time, if one store was low on something that was in stock in another store, they would move the stock from the store that had a surplus to the store that had a deficit. And they managed to distribute everything that way. The idea of being more decentralized is it seems to me that would work well or better with services. Because in manufacturing, usually stuff is made in one place. It's kind of difficult. I mean, there is decentralization in the possibility of, say, you make a car, well, you can assemble the car in some place, but you can't necessarily make the parts that are assembled in that place. So there has to be a certain amount of centralization, just simply because you have to get stuff from one place to another, and that has to be managed. at a higher level where there's knowledge of where everything is. And Amazon does that very well. So given, I want to go back to the fact that right now the jobs are very low end that Amazon's creating. The vast majority of the jobs that they create pay, well, $15 an hour, which is better than minimum wage, but they have no benefits and very, very poor working conditions. So you're a developing country, the logistics behind getting stuff from one place to another is incredibly complicated, but you can steal Walmart's model or Amazon's model and start to be able to learn from that. But I really understand that the infrastructure, the ability to use the internet and so on are just not there. I was doing some work with an orphanage in Beirut that was an orphanage for Syrian refugees. And they had a conference where Google and the State Department and the world, anyway, it was a giant nonprofit of nonprofits that helped fund various kinds of things. And all the discussion there was Google people and Silicon Valley people, and they're saying, "Oh, we can make this great software that that's in Arabic and can use this and that modern teaching technique." And I got in a little working group with it. This is where I got to know about this place, with a woman who actually ran a place for Syrian refugee children. So she was on the ground and she knew what it was like. And she said, these people are going to go home to a house with no power, to mothers who are illiterate. And the whole idea that they're going to go home and use the internet to learn something and their parents are going to help them is beyond ridiculous. In our place, we can't even afford to have enough computers that every child has a computer during their class. There's a level that we don't even understand in the United States. It's not, we can't really comprehend the challenges that people have in the developing world to be able to make it possible for people to have the kind of systems that we're talking about right now. And the last thing I'm going to say in this little part is that the banking systems that you have, the ability to have stable currency that you know is going to maintain a relatively stable value is very, very important to be able to have a functioning commerce system. Because if you buy something and it's sitting in your warehouse for a while and there's rampant inflation, well, it'll actually get more valuable, but then the people in amount of dollars that it costs for it. But then the people on the other hand who have the dollars, their dollars, or I shouldn't say dollars, their currency, whatever it happens to be, is going to become less and less valuable, so they won't be able to buy as much stuff as they used to buy. So, and that requires a functioning central bank to be able to manage the stability of the currency. And I know in a lot of African countries, especially, they're what we call kleptocracies, where an elite basically steal the money from everybody else and make the country unstable. So I don't have any idea how to address that. It's been a problem for generations, and it makes e-commerce difficult.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Well, I'm a dreamer, but I'm a dad. I'm a granddad. I wish I would have said that at a meeting yesterday before I said, well, I used to work at CBS. No. All right. So, you know, I put up a long time ago a video, and Meryl Streep was the host of it, and it was with an organization called SGI, and it's a Buddhist organization. I think started in Japan, very big in Japan and Taiwan, I believe. Sogai International, and it was she's speaking about. It shows all our high tech that we have here, and all the kinds of money we put into high tech, and then it shows this video of the realities of maybe 2 billion of the humans that are living on Mother Earth. So in not such great condition and not being able to get water. And so I guess that futuristically, and hopefully sooner than that we're able to, whether it's the United Nations or something that changes at some organization. I don't know about these World Economic Forums. I see you have something on World Talent Economic Forum. I don't know what can change it. I do know that talent, though, I mean, because I started off, what did I say? Meryl Streep, right? I know talent is powerful because when I do the World Peace Day concert in Times Square in Central Park or whatever, and they have peacekeepers of a Michael Douglas and a Stevie Wonder and a Shakira, and I'm naming big names, okay? But those kinds of, say, American superstars, in every other country there are superstars, right? I think the superstars should get their act together as a group and help Mother Earth. I let them run it. I don't care, because people bow down to superstars and think that they're beyond humanity almost in certain scenarios. They're screaming and yelling. Who knows whether they're even nice people? So the point is, I think we need to figure out some way that we're going to be able to. We did a transatlantic pipeline, right? So we were able to communicate between America and Europe. Why don't we have a water line and a wheat line? We have all this food. We pay people not to even give the food, to do nothing with it. I don't know. I don't know if I'm saying any answers. I'm just throwing out more of the concerns, but I do believe that we will resolve these concerns. I believe that COVID scared of the world, and I believe that our opportunity to work together is as great as it ever has been, especially
Thank you.
the ability
Thank
to
you.
communicate everywhere like we're doing right now, easily.
Okay. Thank you. I directly want to go for the concluding remarks for today. And before that, I request everyone share our content as much as possible with your policymaker, with your corporations, with your university and academia, with your think tank. And I'm sure we can solve many problems through this process, because we are trying to engage of 300 different corporations. This is our 295 episode. So I request everyone share our content as much as possible. So you can subscribe our YouTube channels, and we are moving with our fundraising options because we have to grow. There is a 40% populations around the world live in Asia Pacific. We can touch millions of people with a lot of interesting content. I'm sure those who regularly attend in World Talent Economy Forums, they can understand that we come up with a different topic, and which is very much relevant for industry, for academia, and for policymakers. We directly want to go for the concluding remarks. I think our new friend, Miss Victoria, joins. Can you share your views, and we are in concluding remarks about internet commerce. Victoria, can you hear me? Can you unmute yourself? Anyway, then I request Professor David.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah. Sorry,
Yes,
I will be
you can
without
open your
video shooting.
camera.
I'm sorry, I have some problem with the camera, and that's why I will be without camera in this time. I really appreciate for the invitation Mr. Sharif, and if we are talking about e-commerce, there is a lot of difference between. I'm from Russia and from former Soviet Union, and there is a big difference between former Soviet Union market and Western market. I'm not sure. For example, such instruments as call tracking and Google AdWords will be present in US much more early than in Russia. And Russian and Ukrainian, for example, in former Soviet Union market, they used Yandex browser and almost not use Google browser. But the main thing that we see that a lot of people from Soviet Union, they started to use marketplaces and to use Facebook, Instagram as the main platform for the promotion and for selling of the products and the services. And it is good because it makes the global internet network much more open, and we have no borders when we are talking about the selling our product and about the communicate with the final customers or just our friends throughout the world. The other difference that Russian market is from time to time get ready to the shutting down of internet and to use just Runet and a lot of people try to understand, do they need to use Swift because of various obstacles. Russia has some problems with the openings and with the sanction policy from US and European Union. Nevertheless, which I see right now that a lot of people try to sell the product and their skills to study the audience, how to use eBay, how to use Amazon. For example, I know a lot of startups from Ukraine that is starting to use Amazon for their budget products, and they make some success. Other fashion brands, for example, they use only Instagram. They don't even a lot of people starting not to. They finish to use some own websites and look at the Instagram and how the Instagram and Facebook could help them to sell their products, their services. If we are talking about Russian e-commerce, for example, such services as Google programmatic, and people in Russia, most of audience do not use it because it's a couple of years ago when I'm working with one of the leading call tracking service in Russia, which copy pasting for somehow Google call tracking. We understand that we're talking with the businessmen who do not want to use some instruments that could help to make the economical or marketing strategy much efficient. When Russia was in 19th, when we have some higher prices on our oil, the main policy of Russian business was we do not count our money. It's no, we just name the price and we will pay. These years and the COVID and crisis sanction policy help to boost this policy, to understand the business starts to understand that to be efficient, they need to count their money. They look at various markets as well. Yes, Russian e-commerce tracking is quietly unique and they are not. If there is two types of companies that could make the business bigger. They start in Russia, and after that they go to New York or San Fran to talk with the investors and to start to sell the features or e-commerce services in U.S. market, because U.S. market is the biggest market in the world, and all the prominent instruments in e-commerce starting start to develop in US mostly. From the other side, what I see in US, the classic business, for example, water business, water equipment business, they sell the products P2P, person to person, and they are do not use almost do not use the digital network for the sellings. They do not sell. So even I have the experience with one startup that could present new technology for water purification, and when we finalize our negotiations after that, the owner do not understand why is he need to use digital marketing for promotion of his equipment. In this case, if we planning to sell this equipment in Russia, and in Russia we could sell water purification systems only throughout the internet. The people are quite do not like to see some neighbors or some not acquainted person and to talk with him inside his apartment, he or she's apartment, and that's why person per person could be the selling problem person to person could be here only via digital, with the help of digital, with the help of various e-commerce instruments. Nevertheless, here we see that a lot of marketplaces will start to develop. We have three leaders in market placement of fashion industry. Model Wildberries would have some HR system marketplaces, and sees that some people and some businesses do understand what is programmatic is, and they start to invest in such products. But for example, a couple of years ago, such instrument as programmatic was not interesting for investors here, because it was too professional for any person who work here, and person who work here in e-commerce, they invest. For example, we have some B2B taxi services, and the people who invest in this service, they work with the programmatic, with the e-commerce, but they understand this tool. But the business audience, the people who work in development and or beauty business, they do not understand why they need to send the taxi to the client, and I don't know what the destiny of this startup right now, but frankly speaking, I don't believe that somebody from business owners will be interested in the buying of this startup. But it works not so good as it works in US, for example. But we try. I think that Russian market, for Soviet Union market, I couldn't, for example, unfortunately, say a lot about the Asian market. But Russian market quite similar to American, but they differs for 5-10 years. because of audience. And the audience, the audience not ready, not all the audience ready to sell, to buy this instrument here. If you have some questions,
Thank
we'll
you,
be glad
thank
to.
you, thank you, thank you. I directly want to go for the concluding remarks. Thank you, thank you, Professor. First, Professor David, then Mr. Paul, then Professor Donald, then Mr. Manuel, and finally Victoria. Professor David, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Well, I want to end today on a note of optimism. I find myself being an optimist not because I want to be, but because as I look at history, I see reasons to be optimistic. We don't live the same way as humans that we did 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago. I would want to live at this point in history versus anything in the past. Now, the future is up to us, but I want to point out an example is that Estonia, a country that was in the former Soviet Union, we've heard when it became set free from the Soviet Union, it essentially needed to, it was a country, developing country. It had little in the way of technology, and it transformed itself. I've talked about this on previous programs, and I can provide some video and some written material about how they went through and were able to take and move their infrastructure forward. And they now, in my opinion, are one of the models, I think, of e-governance, e-commerce, and so forth. Yes, a small country, a developing country, and they were able to do that. And why were they able to do that? Because they were able to embrace change, which is a really important thing moving forward. It's so easy for us to be stuck in wanting to do things the way they've always been done in the past. I've heard it said that the older generation must die off so that the younger generation can bring around the change and the improvements that they need until they become the older generation, and then they need to die off to allow the younger one to do that. I'm a proponent of a long and healthy life, so I say I need to take that on myself, and I need to shed my ideas of the older generation, embrace the younger generation, and put them forward. And Estonia did that as a country. I can do that as a person. Now, the future is not one blanket thing. When I talk about the future, I'm talking about how it will break out in different areas, perhaps in the United States, perhaps in China, perhaps in Europe, perhaps in Asia Pacific. It will not be evenly distributed. The future has never been evenly distributed. It is what you make of it, where you're at, both personally, corporately, and as a country. I do want to say, though, that it is in the best interest of the more developed countries to help and to foster what goes on in the lesser developed countries. Another example that we've probably heard many times is you're flying along in a commercial aircraft and those oxygen masks drop from the ceiling. You need to take care of getting your own oxygen mask on first so that you don't pass out, and then help those around you. It's in best interest. Maybe a more pertinent example is what's going on in COVID. We tend to come back and talk about that. And I've seen where the United States has pushed manufacture and distribution of COVID vaccines throughout this country. And we currently are doing the best that we can to vaccinate our own people. And we now have a formal plan as of yesterday to share doses throughout the world. Is it because that we are kind? I would like to think so. But it's also, quite honestly, practically in our best interest to do so. COVID, wherever it exists, will come back and infect those more developed countries again because of how it can mutate and so forth. So it's in the best interest not just being kind to be able to get these vaccines out. So that's an example of why that needs to be done. So I want to leave you with saying that from somebody who wants to live long, I want to live better as far as living long, and thinking rationally and being kind are the essential elements of that.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Paul, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Okay. Thanks, David. David, you had a lot of good things there. Reminded me of a few things. I appreciate that. First thing, I'm an interfaith, all-faith minister, but I knew I'm Jewish, but I think somebody said that it took us 44 years so we could change in the desert, so we could have a new community start us up again. The second thought that you hit me with, thank you, because I'm trying to figure out what am I going to say, is that 23 years ago, I had a technical person from Fashion Institute of Technology here in New York, from Estonia. And Estonia, these guys built my first website. They created, actually, if I was a better marketer, one of the first content organizer systems for me. Like $100,000 job. They did it because they wanted to do it. And then my server for like 10 years was in Estonia. Skype's the Estonian guy, right? And so on and so forth. So, technology has given an opportunity to a lot of countries to, show their wares, show their wisdom, and show their ability to hack somebody. It's a very interesting reality. So I guess my thought is that I just hope that with all this, I'll just add one other thing about age. On CBS on Sunday nights, the famous show, they said 50% of the people that are born now today will live over 100 and 60 minutes. I guess just lastly, it always boils down to when people make money, let's hope and pray that they use their money wisely. Let's hope that they use it for hospitals and for doing good and are conscientious. I think that wave of social corporate responsibility and diversity of all kinds of people working with people and respecting each other, that I think is growing here worldwide. So I think that's good news. And once again, and Sharif, thank you for giving me an opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So how you develop your very big organization, you like mentor for me. I'm very young, so I should follow. Even everybody, most of them actually, Professor Donalds, Professor David, Mr. Paul, all of you are like for me like mentors. And Mr. Pauls and Victoria, I think they are my good friends. So thank you for joining today. It's really, really a great session for us and great learning for the Asia Pacific people. Professor Donalds, what's your concluding remarks? And you did a lot for World Talent Economy Forum. Unmute, please.
Thank you. I really enjoy being on the show and really want to continue to support what you do, Sharif. I think it's very valuable. What I want to kind of echo something that others have said. I've been fortunate enough to live in Finland, and Estonian is the very close language to Finnish, which is a very odd language. It's not it's not a European language. It came from Eastern Asia, but its great grandmother came from Eastern Asia. But the Estonians did something incredible, which is after they got out of the Soviet Union, they said, "Oh shit, what are we going to do now?" And they actually got together a group of young people, and they put together social scientists, they put together technologists, and they studied all over the world how governments worked. And they designed from scratch a new government, which has been incredibly effective. I think that it'd be really interesting for everyone to look at what they did. Since they're so close to Finland, they did have the advantage of being able to have the Finns help them. And the Finns are another country that has been, after their civil war in 1917 and a couple of years after that, they designed a new government from scratch. And they designed it to be incredibly egalitarian. And they're the happiest country in the world right now, and they're economically successful, even though they've gone through several very tough things that have happened to them. And the president and her council are all, with one exception, women under 35. So that's, I think, a really marvelous thing, is that as David was saying, there's actually a quote by Niels Bohr that's attributed to Niels Bohr, and we don't know if he really said it or not, which is that science progresses funeral by funeral. But all of us, we wind up being in a lot of different networks. And Paul was mentioning that he's a father and he's an engineer. And each of these groups of people that we call it role sets. We all have we have different roles. And within the roles, there's expectations. And the expectations come from our culture. So I have a friend who married a Chinese woman, and raising kids has been quite a challenge because her parents, being Chinese, have extremely different views of what parents are and what parents are supposed to do. As a parent, it's a wonderful situation because you meet people through parents of other kids. So the kids make new connections for you. So you wind up going out into, expanding your social networks. And another thing Paul said about how the first thing we ask is, what's your job? In California, especially in Southern California, the second question is, what kind of car do you drive? They don't ask that in New York because most people don't have cars, So anyway, it's a sign of status. It tells people where you are in the status hierarchy, what kind of car you drive. But I've taken at meetups to asking people questions like, what was the most fun place you've ever been? I mean, a lot of people travel. I mean, what was the best experience you had traveling? What's your hobby? What's your favorite thing to do when you're not working? And things like that, because just the like, what do you do question is so trite that it's. But the point of the matter is it goes back to another thing that David said. There's a science fiction writer named William Gibson who said the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And I think if you listen to what I'm saying, I buy my clothes online mostly. I buy shoes, everything. I know what my shoe size is because I've worn the same shoe size forever. So why not just buy them online? It's cheaper, easier. I know what size clothes I wear, everything. And Amazon has a whole thing now where you can buy clothes, wear them for a week, and if you don't like them, you can just send them back. It's an online store where you can try stuff on. So all of these things are already happening. And for people in the developing world, it's a fantastic opportunity. I mean, China has been doing that to an incredible degree where they've been mimicking our online sales in the United States and coming up with companies that are getting, the size of Amazon. They're really doing an amazing job doing that. So anyway, what I'm going to say is something that I say every session, which is that the knowledge that you get from other people. It just doesn't spring into full blown into your head from some mysterious other dimension or something like that. And so the more the relationships you make and the more open you are to making relationships. And that's where what Paul was saying about asking people about different things, like what kind of music do you like and things like that. Those are things that allow you to start not only connecting with other people, but connecting to the networks and the worlds that they're involved with. And if the future's already here, then what your job is as an entrepreneur or trying to gain knowledge, trying to find a career, or even design a government, the solutions that you need are there, and it's up to you to be able to make the connections that you need to be able to find that information. And that's what I always say. So
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Paul. Yes.
Just one quick thing. That was wonderful, Donald. But I do want to give credit where credit's due. It's David who inspired me by saying when he got his first thing, when someone asked him what he does, who he is, what it is about, he's the one that said, I'm a dad, I'm a whatever father, whatever granddad.
Right.
Yes,
yes, David. Thank you.
That inspired me to say.
Well, thank you all. Thank you all. You all inspire me as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Manuel. Yes. I think this is your first day for thank you. Thank you for joining.
Okay, so I would say thank you so much for the invitation. It's a very great discussion, and I would like to add something like I think the e-commerce, small businesses, and the new startups that are coming, it's important for them to know their markets. Like I think Miss Victoria said, it's important to study your market and know what exactly is needed in your region before launching what you want to launch. And also it's important to bring in the young generation, like Professor David mentioned it. So to bring new ideas and to listen to what the young generation also has to propose into the digital transformation and the e-commerce. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Victoria, thank you. Thank you for your joining.
Thank you very much for
Yes. What's your concluding remarks for today?
thank you very much for invitation. It was quite pleasant for you to join, and I hope that in any case we will finish this COVID. This post-COVID and post-COVID, we go through it with the much more positive much more positive trends than we were before that, and I hope that in any, because I believe that in any negative situation there is a lot of positive that we could get, and e-commerce. It's one of these that because of COVID we have some boost of the digital marketing, digital industry, and IT business throughout the world. In any case, so we have a remote job, and one of the positive of remote job, because as I'm sure that in the nearest future there is no limited to these jobs, the IT and e-commerce. These jobs, they have no limits on the age, and any person, no matter what age they are, they could work and be in demand of this of the social networking. That's why I believe in e-commerce and IT industry in any case, and crypto.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really, really great session. Thank you, Professor David, Mr. Paul, Professor Donalds, Manuels, and Victoria. Thank you for joining today. And previously, Professor Edwards, my friend Mr. Aaron also joined today's session. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. It's really, really great sessions for us. And share our content as much as possible, I am hopeful with our collaboration we can solve many problems of developing nations, because I always say developing nations has a lot of problem, need not lot of solution, and need lot of people like you, like entrepreneur, those who can solve the local problem. So thank you everyone. Thank you. Bye bye and take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.